What's up, guys? Emily Gagnon here on Wednesday, September 20th. And I am riding solo on Sports Tonight, ANF Plus. But I've got you covered with so many cool topics, good topics, and we're going to get started with baseball. We are so close to October baseball, so I figured we're going to get that out of the way first and foremost because Braves fans right now are getting ready for the team, for the Braves who've broken so many records, on the brink of breaking so many records. Fans are ready to watch them play in postseason play, which we already know they've clinched the NL East title. And for a sixth straight season, they have the most, they've won the division the most out of any other team in all of baseball now that they clinched the NL East title. They did that a week ago today in Philadelphia. We know they're playing in the playoffs, but here's what we don't know is why they're playing some sloppy ball as of late. So, let's talk about their game today. They lost to the Phillies by a run. This game went to extras, 10 innings to decide who was going to win this game, 6-5, so they lost by a run. But listen, the bigger picture here is that they have lost 2 straight series now. They got swept by Miami over the weekend. Miami scored 36 runs to the Braves 13. So that was over the weekend. And now, against the Phillies at home, they lost the first game, game 1, won game 2, and then lost this afternoon. It was a 12-20 first pitch. Manager Brian Snitker, who we heard from on Monday before this series started, he was asked, what happened in Miami? You guys fell flat. Did you not have any energy or enough energy? And he said, no, I feel like we had enough energy, but our pitching was just bad. So he just laid it out. Just that simply. We did not have good pitching. And, that might be the concern right now is their pitching. Because you certainly, couldn't say that their offense has that many issues because they've carried the team for the entire season. They lead the league in home runs. They have at least 5 different players who have 30 home runs each, at least 30 home runs each, and that ties the 2019 Twins for the most 30 home run hitters in a season on a team in MLB history. Let that sink in. They've depended on the home run ball a lot this season. Brian Snitker said he doesn't think that they're reaching for home runs. He doesn't think that that's what they're trying to do, but they're just having really good at bats, and that's what's creating these homers and the fact that they're leading the league in homers. But right now, pitching, as he said, could be an issue. And this is certainly not the time of the year where you want a team like the Braves, who've been so consistent and so hot this entire year, to slow down and to get cold. I want to take it back to last season before Dansby Swanson left and moved on. During that postseason run, that very short postseason run they had, he said that he thought that the bye actually hurt them and did not help them. They earned that bye. They played well throughout the regular season to be able to get that bye. And then in that first round, the hottest team won, and it wasn't them. They cooled off during that break. It was the Phillies who just kept getting hotter and hotter and hotter, who took down the Braves. So they certainly don't want that to happen this year. Yes, postseason play is still a ways away, but you don't want this to be the time of the year or the first time all year that you start getting cold. And so, yes, they're guaranteed a spot in the playoffs, all the things, but you want them to be able to continue to be consistent, and we just haven't seen that as of late. They celebrated Wednesday night of last week, champagne showers, all the things, and really haven't won much since. They've won 1 game out of 6. So it's definitely something to look out for, right? But Snit seems to think, at least on Monday, that the pitching just wasn't good, and they need to get back to some solid pitching, and we'll see what happens with that. But the Braves are still the team to beat in baseball. They should hit 100. If they don't hit 100 wins on the season in the next a couple weeks before the postseason starts, something will have gone very wrong. But I still expect them to be a 100-win team. You know, they clinched the division 96 games in or something like that. No, 96. They had 96 wins. So they've been doing so many things, so many great things this season. They've played such solid baseball. That there's no reason to quit now, but I think a lot of the players are resting and just taking it easier than they have all season long because they have a little bit of wiggle room, leniency. But they hit the road now that they've wrapped up this very short 3-game set against the Phillies. They hit the road right away. They play at the Nationals starting tomorrow night. So, we'll see if they can, right their wrongs and just kind of direct the ship in another direction, I guess I should say, in a winning direction. And we'll see what they can do starting tomorrow. But definitely 2 lost series in a row is not something that we've been used to with these Braves this season. Moving on to the Falcons, who, unlike the Braves as of late, have been red hot. They are 2-0 for the first time since 2017, their last winning season. That's pretty wild to think about. But let's just talk about how they played 2 home games and have had to really, they weren't well ahead of those 2 teams of Green Bay or of Carolina, so it was close games. And if it were any other season, or at least in the past few years, they would have gone into the fourth quarter and they wouldn't have been able to finish. That's the difference between this year's team and perhaps other years' teams, is the fact that the Falcons' defense came in that game in that fourth quarter and was able to finish a game. They made the stops that were necessary to be able to hold on to the lead, even though they came from behind to win. The defense really did their job. And, there are some stats that I saw that are very indicative of how the Falcons are playing right now. But after 2 weeks in total defense, the Falcons are third. It's not very often that we've said that in recent past. We have not said that the Falcons are that good, but they're in top 5 in the NFL right now in total defense. But entering the fourth quarter this year, they've outscored their opponents 27-0, outgained opponents 244-56. Their longest play allowed has been 11 yards, and that's super telling to me. Again, that means the defense is making the stops that are necessary to win games. They're staying involved and locked in, and that's the reason why this offseason the Falcons organization spent so much money on revamping the defense, got a new defensive coordinator, got some veteran players on the team. Jesse Bates has obviously come to Atlanta and really changed a lot. He's played some beautiful football since being here. And then, you take a look at Desmond Ridder, who says he prides himself in protecting the ball. And there's been some issues there. I say that because, in the first quarter of both games that he's played in, he fumbled the ball in game 1, and then he threw a pick in the second game, but both of those were very early on in the game. So maybe he's nervous and still settling his nerves down. But by the end of the game, he's able to really settle in and focus. But again, like entering the fourth quarter with him, he's 10 of 12, 181 yards, no interceptions, no sacks, and that's in the fourth quarter of the last 2 games. So, if you look at this year's team versus other, and this is just like very recent, last few years, the fourth quarter has not been their strength. But right now, Falcons defense and Desmond Ridder, who controls the offense, playing solid football. And they're playing disciplined football in the fourth quarter of games. And when you're in a tight game, that's certainly what you want, and that's how you win games. So the Falcons, we'll find out a little bit more about them this weekend when they play the Lions on the road. This Lions team, to me, is not the same Lions team of years past. They beat the Chiefs week 1 on Thursday Night Football. They lost this past week. They're 1-1, but they're going to be at home, and It's going to be in an atmosphere that isn't too friendly to the Falcons, which, by the way, mad props to the fans, Falcons fans, for showing up the last 2 weeks. I have not heard Mercedes-Benz Stadium like that in a very, very long time. So it was cool to see fans like show up for the team, and it's very apparent that they are engaged this year. And I think it starts like that. Every year starts where the fans are showing up, they're cheering, they're excited. It's a new year, new hopes. But then the Falcons let them down, so they stopped coming to games. But right now, the Falcons have won the first two, so fans have had a reason to show up. They want to see this new team. They want to see the new defense. They want to see the new offense, because it is very, very new. And one thing that shouldn't surprise you about Arthur Smith and his team right now is the fact that they're running the ball. That's been his bread and butter for a long time before he even got here with Derrick Henry at Tennessee with the Titans. So he has brought that over to the Falcons, and it's working for them. And it does take pressure off of Desmond Ridder. Being able to hand off the ball to Tyler Algier or to Bijan Robinson is a treat. And Robinson has played beautifully the first two games. He's making Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot look very good right now, because a lot of people were questioning why they took a running back 8 overall in that first round. It doesn't happen very often, not nowadays. But there were a lot of questions about that, and right now in the first two games, it's paid off. It really has paid off. So let's see game 3 on the road, an unfriendly environment. Can they continue to run the ball? Are other teams going to sniff that out and, really focus on Algier, really focus on Bijan? But this is good. The fact that the Falcons are 2-0 for the first time in a long time is very telling of the fact that they're going to fight and they're going to try to really, really try to play disciplined football in the fourth quarter and win games. So their next two, though, are on the road. So we'll learn a little more about them this weekend and then the following, and then we'll see we'll have a better picture of what the Falcons are about this season. Because, obviously winning at home is great, but you got to be able to rinse them on the road to be able to be a good team. Okay, let's talk about the Dogs, who are at home once again. They're like the Falcons. They have yet to play on the road. Their first 4 home games for the UGA's football team has been at Sanford Stadium. They'll play game 4 Saturday night, 7:30 kick against UAB. So they're taking a pause from SEC play, and they're going to face UAB, coached by Trent Dilford, the former NFL quarterback. He was coaching high school ball, and now this is his first college opportunity. Head coach Kirby Smart has some really great things to say about Dilfer and how much he respects the fact that he played and then moved on to coaching and is just moving his way up through the ranks. So you've got to be able to respect that as a coach. And Dilfer said he couldn't wait. He said this is the reason you play, is to be able to play at places like UGA. I'm sure Saturday night it's going to be a very fun atmosphere to be in at Sanford Stadium. That's when they had their lights on, the light show, all the things. So it'll be, I'm sure, a very nice atmosphere at Sanford Stadium Saturday night. It is a late kick, but they installed all those lights and did all that for recruiting and to have a one-up on other teams, but haven't played very many night games. So this year this is their second. So they've had 2 so far where they've been able to display all of the cool things that the stadium has to offer. So I'm sure the coaching staff and Georgia is pretty happy about that. But after watching South Carolina, you've got to wonder, the next time the Dogs face a good opponent, which is next week at Auburn, how they're going to respond. Yes, they beat South Carolina. Final score 24-14. But that first half was ugly. The Gamecocks scored on their opening drive. Rattler looked very, very good. But UGA's defense gave up a lot more than they usually do. They entered that game against USC only giving up 10 points through 2 games. They gave up 14 against South Carolina. They say no one in our end zone for a reason. They really preach that at Georgia, and players say it all the time, no one in our end zone, and they let USC in their end zone twice. Yes, they shut them out in the second half, but that first half, USC was up 14-3, and sure, Georgia responded nicely in that second half and scored 21 unanswered points. But it wasn't looking good for a second. I said it, the first couple weeks was that the final score was not indicative of, how Georgia was playing. Once they actually faced an SEC opponent, it wasn't going to be, a 50-3 score. That just wasn't going to happen. A 40 whatever to 6 score. No, that wasn't going to be it. So right now, UAB should be fine, but at Auburn, that's going to be a completely different story. Kirby doesn't like to look ahead, or at least he tells us he doesn't like to look ahead. He likes to keep his players focused on what's right in front of them. What's right in front of them right now is UAB, but you better believe coaches at least are starting to look, if they haven't already, starting to look at film of Auburn. But he said after the game that he learned more about his team in that second half against South Carolina than he had any other day this year. He wanted them to respond. He wanted them to show resiliency, and that's what they did. So if you're a fan, should you be worried? I think so. Because the Dogs right now are not looking like the team of the last 2 years. But that's because they have a lot of new faces. They have Carson Beck at quarterback, who's still finding his way, finding his voice, even though he's been on the team for a few years. It's his first season starting at Georgia. So there's going to be some bumps on the road. And if they want a three-peat, which, hasn't been done since 1930, this is going to happen. You can't lose more than one game, unfortunately, in college football. So, at Auburn, they're at Tennessee, even, Florida, Georgia, in Jacksonville. Florida beat Tennessee in the Swamp this past Saturday. Anything can happen. And now that we've seen 3 games with the Dogs, I think that they got a wake-up call against South Carolina, and this, for me, feels a lot like Mizzou of last year, where they were down 16-6 on the road at Missouri. And then came back to win it by 4 points, 26-22. When you talk to players last year, they were quick to tell you that was the game that they faced the most adversity, where they had to battle back. They learned a lot about themselves. And this game, this past game in week 3, game 3 against South Carolina, very well could be the South Carolina of this year. But we won't know that. We won't know that. We've got so many more games to go, so we won't know that until the end of the season. But we certainly will find out in the next few games if they've cleaned things up. The only way to get better, though, is to go out on the field and get reps, right? So for Carson Beck and any of the younger guys, the only way to get better, even if you make mistakes, is to go out on the field and do it. So that's the unfortunate part, is you can't really, you can only practice so much with all the ones and the twos and all the things until you got to go out and do it. And right now, all these guys are doing it for the first time, basically. With Stetson Bennett, he had been there, done that several times. But with Carson Beck, that is not the case. So, what's happening right now is to be expected. I wouldn't be too worried, but I would be, concerned to the point where it's like, okay, they better get better here in the next couple weeks before going on the road. Their first road test, 3:30 kick on CBS, on Atlanta News First, next weekend on the 30th. So that should be a fun one, because I think that Auburn has one of the best atmospheres in all of college football, and they certainly bring it against Georgia. And Georgia beats UAB. Which they very much should. They'll remain more than likely the number 1 team in the country. So you got the number 1 team in the country rolling into Auburn. Auburn's playing significantly better. Hugh Freeze has got them, on a roll right now. They have yet to lose. It's going to be a tough one for them this weekend, but I think that you can expect a very unfriendly atmosphere waiting for the Dogs on Saturday by Tiger fans. Atlanta United could clinch a playoff spot tonight. So this is what they have to do. And there's a lot that has to happen. They're not controlling their own destiny, in the sense that they need a lot of other teams to do other things for them to be able to clinch. But so they'd have to win at DC United. And so this is just the start of it. So they at least, their part of it is they have to win the match tonight. So then they'd also need Charlotte FC to lose or draw against Philadelphia. And there's a lot of ands here. So that's two things that have to happen. The third thing that has to happen is Chicago has to lose or draw at Columbus. And then also, so there's 5 things that need to happen now. New York Red Bulls, they have to lose or draw against Austin FC. So there's a lot of things that have to happen tonight for Atlanta United to clinch a playoff berth, but it is possible. And, you know, they've had a lot of up and down seasons here in the last few years. So at least we're talking about them making the playoffs and being able to make a playoff spot, playing in the postseason, which is good, which is what you want. However, tonight might not be their night, but it could be. They very well could. At the end of the night, we could be talking about how Atlanta United is back in the playoffs. And, you know, Yorgos Giakoumakis, you got to give him a ton of credit. The club acquired him right before the season started, and I mean right before the season started. And he's played beautifully. He's been able to come in and make a big difference right away, and that's exactly what he said he was going to do. But so many players say that, and, you know, they don't end up having great seasons, but not for Gigi. He's scored a ton of goals. He's made a difference. He looks like he's a leader. You know, Atlanta United right now, you know, making it to the playoffs, they very well could win, you know, a couple. They've had an up and down season, like they've had up and down years as of late, but right now it looks like things are changing slowly for this club. They have a couple of really good players right now. Whether they stay on the team or not is yet to be seen, but I'm feeling good about them, at least to be able to get into the playoffs. Moving on to what's on my mind, I got to go back to the Dogs, and I got to go back to the fact that in that second half against South Carolina, I was at the game, and the crowd wasn't very involved. And you know, I'm not. This is not me saying anything bad about the fans at Sanford Stadium, because you guys are there to support the team, and it's very rare that Kirby ever says anything like Nick Saban telling the fans to stay through to the end of the game. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. So, you know, the fans stick around at Georgia, but fans were not extremely involved in the first half. And I say that because it wasn't as loud as it was in that second half. Fans really, you know, started getting wilder in that second half, and it gave the Dogs a push. It certainly allowed them, in my opinion, to gain momentum and help them win the game. And I don't say that very often, but that place got very loud in the second half, and it wasn't like that in the first half. So I think, number one, it was a wake-up call for fans, but a wake-up call for the team in the sense that when they do play at Auburn next weekend, those fans, it will not be like that. So if the Dogs get behind at Auburn, I think it's going to be a real issue. So for me, and I think coaches know that, you know, they cannot get behind on the road, certainly not at Auburn or a team further down the road like Tennessee, because they will not have those fans there to support them and to help them. And, you know, I give props to the fans. They deserve a ton of credit in that second half. They helped the defense. You know, no points scored by South Carolina there in the second half, and the offense woke up a little bit. Dejon Edwards played a great game, had over 100 yards on the ground. But yeah, I think that for the Dogs, be very aware that once you start playing on the road, that crowd will not be there to save you, because your first 4 games have been at home. And a big knock on the Dogs this season has been the fact that their schedule is quite easy. And when you take a look at it, it certainly does look that way. But in a couple weeks, that schedule that looks easy, you know, the Dogs being at Auburn is just not going to work out for them if they enter the half down by 2 touchdowns. I just don't see how they can come back from that. But maybe we will learn that Carson Beck and the offense is better than I think right now. But we'll have to wait and see. That's the beauty of football. There's a ton of games to go, but right now the Dogs are 3-0. We'll talk to you all tomorrow. Have a great night. Enjoy football this week, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a good night.